Hello, everyone. Happy Monday night. It is March 3rd, 2025 here on the Wolverine.com. Our Monday show, Anthony Broom here with Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey, the three of us back to all virtual. Last week, we were all, or two of us were at Regents Field. Ballas zoomed in now. It's all back to normal here. And we have a lot to get to today. It's going to be a basketball-heavy show, obviously, with some of the things that have gone on the last week or so with Michigan hoops, including a blowout loss yesterday at home. Dusty May spoke to the media today. We'll cover all of that, get into a little bit of NFL Combine, and a little bit of also, this just came across the wire from our buddy Pete Nakos, Michigan not planning on canceling its spring game. So we'll chat about that a little bit later. And as we do at the end of every show, we will take your questions, both if you're posting on the message board or live in the chat, as we are live here every Monday night at 6 p.m. Fellas, welcome back. It's was quite a week to be a Michigan basketball follower.
Weird, right? And Clayton picked a loss, and I was with him yesterday feeling like, boy, this is a bad matchup for Michigan. Everybody points to matchups still, like, oh, Illinois lost by 50 to Duke, so they suck. Well, they got players, and they match up well with Michigan. Michigan obviously has been struggling. You can tell that they've kind of hit the wall, guys, and the flu's been ravaging that team. So we knew that was going to be a hard game. I didn't know it was going to be that hard. And they got to pick it up, fellas, if they're going to have a chance here to make a run in March. But that starts with getting healthy. Number one, they got to start making shots again, fellas. I don't know what's going on there, but what I wrote after the game is like, okay, it can be a fluke after a couple games, then it becomes a trend, and then after a month and a half, maybe it's who you are, right? In conference play against better competition, you hope that they're a little bit better than what they've shown. If they can get to like 35%, then this can be a good basketball team, and I think they've got better shooters than they've shown. But it's all upstairs, fellas, in the confidence, right? That, man, you've got to have that if you want to be a good shooting team. So disappointing loss, but an opportunity against Maryland to right the ship.
Just a crazy week overall. You play a game, bless you there. You play a game on Monday at Nebraska where no one could hit a shot. You play a game on Thursday at home against Rutgers where no one could miss a shot. And you played bad defense. And really, I thought looked kind of worn down for 29 minutes until they dug deep and pulled out the win. Namari Burnett, I mean, just incredible hitting the shot at the buzzer. Feel really good for him. And then it felt like Sunday against Illinois was kind of an extension in terms of the effort that they brought, the illness going through the team, having a shortened bench in the games leading up to that with Reuben Jones being ill and Sam Walters still being hurt with the back injury. All kind of came together against an Illinois team that is a bad matchup for Michigan. Just an interesting week. To get out of it 2-1 feels like a win in some respects, but you still have some improvement to do here, and you're entering another big week. You don't want to end the season with three straight regular season losses. You still have a championship you could win in the Big Ten, and you want to be playing and figuring some things out as you head into the postseason with the Big Ten tournament next week.
And we'll get into all of that here in a minute. First, I want to shout out, first off, we are brought to you tonight by our friends over at HomefieldApparel.com. You guys always hear us rave about them, the collection of vintage-inspired apparel that they have in their collection. They've got still plenty of national championship items in there. I'm looking at the Michigan football joggers right now, which I own. They're incredibly comfortable. I own almost all of these things, and it's not because they're a sponsor. They're good people, and it's a good product too. I love my set of Homefield stuff. I've got a trucker hat. I've got probably 4 or 5 sweatshirts at this point, a billion T-shirts from more schools than just Michigan. Just a great site. Some of the most comfortable stuff that you'll ever own. Use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order over at HomefieldApparel.com. That is promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. We are also brought to you tonight by ourselves at thewolverine.com. Promo code UM1 gets you 2 months of access over at our website. It's the message board that's behind the paywall. All of the goodies, 2 months of access for $1 using that promo code UM1. That's, again, promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for $1. So take advantage of both of those things today. I want to open this show today. We sort of hit on some of the wide-ranging thoughts on the program of Michigan basketball in the here and now. the question I have is this: how concerned are we about this? Because on one hand, yes, a lot can happen in the vacuum of one game. We saw what happened in that Purdue game in late January, and then you come back and you win I think 6 straight after that. So sometimes these losses where you sort of bottom out happen, and it can serve as a way to reset, retool, and you kind of move forward there. Sunday's game felt like sort of the culmination of not so much the second half of the season, but more so the 3 previous games they had played prior to that. I'm talking Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers, where um, you know you can't make timely shots. When you make timely shots, you got a couple banked threes going in for the other team, and really yesterday. And I know there's been talk that the flu has sort of worked its way through the team. Reuben Jones apparently lost 10 pounds while he was sick, and he gave it a go on Sunday. But still, you look at this team in general. Sunday's game to me felt like maybe their worst quote unquote effort of the season. Just a lot of, you give up 19 offensive rebounds. To me, that's an effort thing. That's being a step too slow. That's being out of position. I felt like a lot of the threes that they missed were short. They're clanking off the front of the rim. To me, right now, this looks like a team that has tired legs. And I don't know if that's an illness thing. I don't know if that's how the schedule's broken down. But, Sunday to me was more so a culmination of a lot of bad habits they've developed recently, as opposed to, you just had a bad day at the office.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I just wrote a news and views column on this. That okay, if Danny Wolf wasn't sick, and we questioned it upstairs, and everybody I talked to after the game said, man, there was something wrong. And even the substitution patterns, right? They seem to be getting him more breathers earlier, even when things, he just looked a step slow. I didn't think they were sending him a message. It seemed to me like he needed the rest. At the very least, he's worn down. And I guess that's what you would imagine, right? When you're playing through a 7-footer who acts like a point guard sometimes, and the usage, he's not used to this level of competition, being this aggressive offensively and having the offense go through him all the time like that is, a lot of us thought that was going to be Trey Donaldson. Then it became Danny Wolf. So I think he's tired. There's no question. And yeah, the flu has ravaged this team. They need Reuben Jones out there, guys, with the way that Roddy Gale is playing. That's a bigger loss than a lot of people really anticipated. We were excited when we heard that he would play, but it was clear that he probably shouldn't have played, guys. Or at the very least, he gave it a go, but he was nowhere near 100%. So he makes this team better. He was getting better other than that Michigan State game. I thought that he'd shown some really good stretches where, as Dusty May said, this is a guy who I feel bad for the Michigan fan base because he has not really shown them what he can do. And I think that he still has another gear there too. So really, it's about getting the legs back. I think the Maryland game is going to be pretty telling, right? Because as Dusty has said, we have bounced back from bad performances to have big wins. It's not like we've strung a bunch of stinkers together. And I think this team is going to be a little embarrassed with the way that things went against Illinois in a ninth straight loss to the Illini. That's crazy. So I'd be surprised if Michigan didn't give a better effort, but I did ask Dusty May today about the rebounding. Is it effort? What is it? He said we had a chance to set the tone. We fumbled a couple early, and then in the second half, they just took over. These guys need to be better about putting bodies on people. They need to be more physical. They are a bunch of nice guys, right? And I hate to use white collar again because there are times this year when they have been really aggressive, but they have got to step it up in a big way to have any shot to beat Michigan State on Sunday, let alone beat Maryland on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's also feels like getting an offensive rebound is like one of the more energizing things you can have as a college basketball team, and it's one of the most demoralizing things you can have happen to you. And it kind of snowballed, and then that allowed them to get in rhythm. I mean, 3 of their 11 threes in the second half were on second chance opportunities, but those guys started feeling good about themselves. And Illinois is a team that shoots a lot of threes as is, and then once they started to get them to go, which they haven't been able to do for a really long time, then they got all the confidence. Michigan's defense, they tried to go zone. They went back and forth between that, and man, neither was really working all that well because they spread the floor so well and went 5 out. No big guy a lot of the time. And then that hurts the rebounding too. Everybody's spread out. Vlad Golden's playing on the perimeter. Danny Wolf's on the perimeter. when those guys are at their best, closer to the basket. They're both good rim protectors, shot blockers. Danny Wolf is an excellent rebounder. Vlad Golden, not as good as he could be, maybe at his size. But it was just a culmination of all that, the matchup, and then you're playing your fourth game in a 9-day span when you had a shortened bench already and you had guys that were playing through illnesses. And I thought one of the more apparent moments that they are a little bit worn down, which, all right, I mean, it's an excuse, but don't look worn down, dig deep, push through. All those sorts of things can apply. Who knows how much you really can physically, because we don't know how these guys felt. But one of the moments was Fat Brooks comes in and Justin Pippen come in, and they're running around, grabbing offensive rebounds, tipping the ball out to other guys. Pippen, was playing with some good aggression. He got fouled 3 times and made all 6 of his free throws. Compare that speed that they were playing with and just the energy to what we saw throughout the course of the game. It was just different. So, but it doesn't mean that they played great offense or played well on defense or rebounded well in the moments that they could have anyway. So it was all coming together at once. And now it's a big bounce back spot against Maryland, where you do feel like this is your last chance here. It is your last chance at home. Luckily you don't have an NIT game coming where you're playing at home. This is your last chance at home to kind of get the vibes right. And if you do win, you have a chance Sunday to go in and get a share of the Big Ten championship at the very least. So potentially to get the outright title. So it's a big game in so many different ways. You want to feel good about yourself, get the confidence back. You want to chase the Big Ten championship. And you want to also just kind of figure some things out and show that you can improve in some of the areas that you're lacking.
Yeah, and you'd love for it too to be, sort of a tune-up game, heading into Michigan State, but it's not. We know that the schedule's backloaded. It's against a team in Maryland that's number 14 on KenPom. It's done, played some really good basketball this year. So I think digging deep and Dusty May said it Monday too, getting better on the margins could add up to a lot because it has just been so many things that have slipped in the last 10 days or so. I'll tell you what my biggest concern is right now. And this goes even beyond just, the last 4 games, is that, on a given night, whether it's Roddy Gale or Reuben Jones, and even when both are healthy or have been healthy, not sick, whatever you want to call it, you're not getting anything out of that 3 position offensively. And depending on the game, some nights you're not really getting much out of Trey Donaldson either. And we know that Namari Burnett has kind of historically been up or down. So right now, I think one of the biggest thing that rings as a concern to me is that you're already not deep, and not as deep as maybe you looked earlier in the year, but 40% of your starting lineup on most nights, and on some nights when all 3 of those guys are off, 60% of your starting lineup, you're just not getting enough out of those guys. And I don't know what's going on with Roddy Gale. I mean, it's been pretty much since the LA trip where he has just not been right at all. But this is one of the biggest, I think, drop-offs in play from a player at his peak that I think I've ever seen. Because I think he had some really good games, in the early part of the season. And for him to just kind of lose it, it's hard to pinpoint. But the best version of this team involves at least pulling your weight at the 3 to a certain extent, and a more aggressive Trey Donaldson. And I'll be honest with you, there are times where it looks like he doesn't want to initiate offense or doesn't want to be the aggressor out there. And if Michigan's going to make any noise, forget about in these final 2 games, but the Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament, they need much better play from their point guard.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. It's when you talk about Trey Donaldson, right? That puts more on Danny Wolf then, right? Because who else is there that can create their offense on this team, guys? Gale can't. You look at Namari Burnett; he's not that guy. You hold your breath with all due respect to Namari when he puts the ball on the floor, and you're thinking, "Oh man." A lot of times bad things happen when and he's improved in that area somewhat at times this year. All these guys are having a tough time finishing right now. At one point, I think the layups category was 6 of 13 for Michigan yesterday, and so they got to finish better around the rim. But Roddy Gale, when you get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, every coach, and I've said this so many times, knows your every move, right? For Michigan State, right? Don't let Jace Richardson go left, so you better not let him go left. There are more guys to know because they go deeper. With Michigan, it's okay. don't let him go right. No, don't let him go left, right? But when it comes to Michigan's guys, right, they are limited. This is a limited roster of guys that can only do so many things. Roddy Gale is going to drive into traffic at times. It's not going to be pretty. You're going to have with Namari Burnett. Don't leave him as a shooter, right? Danny Wolf. Teams have taken away that 4-5 pick and roll. They just have, and that's what good coaches do, and that's what coaches in this conference do. So that's tough to overcome when you are limited at different positions. Everybody says, well, we got to mix things up and you got to tweak the roster and the starting lineup and so on and so forth. But you can only do so much with the guys that you have if you're that limited. So it comes down to making shots. And they got good looks. I asked Dusty May about that. Some people have said, and they wanted us to ask, hey, do you think they're shooting from too deep? He didn't think that was an issue in the Illinois game. I think in some games, you have an opportunity to step up a little bit and maybe get a little closer to that 3-point line, but you want to shoot it in rhythm too. It's not a problem, for example, for Namari Burnett, but Trey Donaldson is probably much better from 21 feet than he is from 24, like a lot of people. So, but really, a lot of the shooting comes down to confidence. Danny Wolf had an air ball, fellas, that was wide open. And when he does that, then he passes up good looks and drives into traffic. Trey Donaldson doesn't want to shoot. It looks like he's just trying to hit rim on some of his shots. And Roddy Gale at this point can't shoot. He's made 1 3 this entire year. So you got to hope that some of these guys step up. Reuben Jones, again, I think has more to give offensively. We know he can be a better shooter than he's shown. So to me, it really comes down to that. You got to make your shots. You need to get more from a healthier Reuben Jones. Hopefully, he comes back a little bit rested from the flu, and he can give them some minutes. It'd be great to get Sam Walters back too, guys. They need another body in there and another guy that can shoot. And even though he was sporadic when he was on, he was really on. So hopefully, get these guys back for the postseason.
I think Reuben Jones coming back is going to be an underrated development, and it might not even be something that people necessarily notice, directly because of him. But when Roddy Gale's on the floor, and I think this is partly why he only played 20 minutes last night. I think it was 20 minutes a game before that as well. And LJ Kaysen got more run. Is the spacing is just so screwed up when he's on the floor. People aren't really closing out far on him. They're kind of sitting back. He's afraid to shoot it at times. He did take the one, which was closer than some of his other attempts have been lately. And then, he'll kind of drive into traffic. And if he's not making that floater, which Michigan just was not making any of those shots yesterday against Illinois, who baits you into taking those, they defend the rim, defend the three. Then, other than his defense, which it wasn't really going well for anyone defensively yesterday for Michigan, there's not a huge point of having him out there. And I think the Michigan staff realized that. But then LJ Kaysen's not really hitting his shots either, and he's an even worse defender. So it's tough without Reuben Jones out there. But the Trey Donaldson thing is probably the most concerning thing out of this whole backcourt issue, because he scored in double figures 20 of his first 24 games. He's scored in double figures just once out of his last 5. So 4 games not in double figures in his first 24, 4 games not in double figures in his last 5. The assists are down. His overall involvement is down. I've been saying this, like if you track like they do in the NBA, dribbles per game, I feel like that's down for Trey Donaldson, probably up for Danny Wolf lately in the last 2-3 weeks. But I don't know that you're going to go far in the tournament without a point guard that's playing at a pretty high level, no matter how good your big guys are. At the same time, we've seen Trey Donaldson play a lot better. I think that's why this is frustrating to watch. And he has some spurts where he takes over, but he wasn't really finishing yesterday. They were kind of forcing him to take shots, and he didn't make them. And he couldn't really kick out to anybody because they don't help. And that's why Michigan ended up getting stagnant and just going to Vlad Golden for hook shots, which he was very good at. But it's 2 points and there's not much rhythm for everybody else. So all those things compounded into another kind of weird, tough, non-efficient offensive game, which is becoming kind of a trend. It starts with the backcourt because big guys are just kind of inconsistent overall too. Like a couple layups don't go, or, Vlad Golden missed all 4 of his free throws yesterday, even though he was very good, or a couple hook shots don't go. Then it's kind of what they are. Guards, if you're going through them, can create a little bit more. There's more variety to what you can get. So they need to get Trey Donaldson going. There's no question. Maryland's a great defensive team, number 2 in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency, so it's going to be tough on Wednesday. But if they could get him going and get a win, those would be two huge W's for Michigan going into what could be a showdown at Michigan State.
A few of these guys could really use a Greg Harden, a heart-to-heart with Greg, God rest his soul. I think, if you look at just the way they're struggling mentally, I think, and with their confidence, and Greg was so good at that, Michigan sports psychologist extraordinaire, who we miss a ton. So I think a lot of it is mental. And yeah, there's some physical to it, but when guys are hesitating to pull threes, remember that Trey Donaldson guys that we saw at UCLA when he was just shutting the crowd up, or was it USC? It was one of the West Coast games where he took over, and you see that, and you know that he has it in him. I want to see that Trey Donaldson here and get these guys get their confidence back, as Dusty May said today.
It feels like with Trey, when the defense is set, like he just struggles to get stuff going. He's great when he's kind of playing with pace. They're backpedaling a little bit. Maybe the matchups aren't perfect for the defense, so we can find somebody else cutting or spotting up. But once it gets set, you need your point guard to create something in the Big Ten. Now, I think it's going to be a more free-flowing game in the tournament. Yep. Something obviously we'll talk about in a couple of weeks when they're in the tournament. But before then, you got to make sure you don't drop a couple lines, seed lines here.
Yeah.
Look, trivia question for you. And Clayton, you might know this, so if you do, you can refrain from it. But in Big Ten play, where do you think Michigan ranks in shooting the three among the entirety of the Big Ten?
In Big Ten play, 14?
I do know it.
15?
16th. 31.6%.
Yeah.
Which, you watch them have these games where they struggle to shoot the three, like, oh, it's an off night. It's an off night. It's an off night. No, that's kind of been what they've been this year, which is surprising because I think we know that they're capable of much better. So we'll end with this on.
We got this stat too, but earlier in the year they were, and I know there were some outlier games. They hit 19 in the one game, but they were making 38.4% of their threes in their first 17 games. That's a pretty big sample size. You have some mid-major games in there. That was 20th in the country at the time. Now it's 27.9 over the last 12, 353rd. So, I mean, it's just an absolutely steep drop-off that you don't see that often.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's not. It goes against the way, like they're not going to win that way because they're built to win that way.
Yep.
If they're not shooting the ball well.
I tell you, man, it's as a shooter back in high school. You lose your confidence, guys. It's like a place kicker, or a golfer, or anything else, man. It's upstairs, and got to get it back somehow. Hopefully they will. Sometimes though, it just takes one great game, right? You get it back, and you get on. Look at the 19. I'll go back to the 1989 Michigan team, and this is not the 1989 Michigan National Championship team, but they got their mojo back early in the tournament, and once they did, and Glenn Rice carried them, everybody started making shots. You start seeing shots go in like Illinois did in the second half of that game, fellas. Then, as Tommy Amaker used to say, it's contagious, and it really is. There's something to that.
Well, and look at Illinois. I was going to bring them up as an example. They've been shooting terrible from three for a long time, and they shoot so many. They are 16-2 when they shoot 27% or better from three. That's lower than Michigan's poor percentage, but they shoot so many of them, and they're an efficient team, and they have a lot of talent. That's all it takes for them to win games. And of course, they exploded, but 37%. It was just so many that they shot yesterday. They shot more threes than twos. So they're a little bit of a different case. But you're right. Like, you're this disastrous team. You lost 3 in a row. You lost by 43 to Duke a week ago. But if you look at it from their perspective, they were waiting to break out. They needed to prove to themselves they could beat a good team, especially on the road. Illinois does it. Now they're feeling good about themselves heading into the last. They only have one game left, but Michigan just needs that performance to maybe get going. I wrote this today. It's coming out in 5 minutes on our site. You're only playing well until you're not, and you're only not until you are. It changes. Mm-hmm. Michigan State lost 3 or 4 games. They were down 16 points at Illinois. They come back. Now they've won 5 in a row, including 4 straight over top 20 teams in the country. You have these ebbs and flows. It's all about how you end up playing after that, how you play in the most important games, and Michigan still has time to turn that around.
I want to end on hoops with this because it was a great question, a great poll that you put out on the board today, Clayton. So where are we at these last 2 games? Are they more likely to go 0-2, 1-1, or 2-0? We'll just go around the room with that.
1-1. I said they would split Illinois and Maryland and lose at Michigan State, and I stand by that. I think they're going to come back with a spirited effort, and they're playing a team that Maryland's got a great starting five. They don't have much after that, so got to get off to a good start. But I believe they win that game. It doesn't help not having the students there. That place was not, the crowd was not into that game on. And of course Michigan didn't really give them a reason to.
No,
And
the cardboard cutouts may as well have been there yesterday.
yeah, it was terrible. And you know what? So it is what it is, but you got to overcome that, right? At least it's not Penn State. I don't know if you guys have watched a game there this year, but it's like listening to a game in a church.
I was thinking of the Penn State atmosphere yesterday while we were there. I blame Austin Fox and his brother Jason Fox for this.
Can I be clear about this? That was an unacceptable effort by the Westphalia crew. And I love Westphalia and I love those guys, but one time I saw Austin Fox looking at his phone. Everybody else is jumping around him and he's sitting there looking at his phone. What's going on, kid?
And he didn't even order a Modelo like the rest of the Westphalians. I give them credit for at least getting a little juiced up and ready to go.
Good job, other guys. Good job, other Westphalians. Austin, you suck. All right, go ahead, Anthony.
Wow.
Well, I got 1-1 as well. I think they bounce back and beat Maryland. If they don't, then maybe they beat Michigan State. I think 1-1 is what's going to happen here in the last week, which is disappointing in terms of chasing a Big Ten championship. But I think that proving that you could win one of these last two games, which also means you figured a couple things out here and you played better than you have, would be really big for this team, seeding wise, confidence wise, everything going into the Big Ten tournament, which, I mean, I think we'd love to see him win that thing, but at the same time, it's not life or death. It's not in the end of the world either. You move on to the next week if you get bounced early there.
I'll make it 3 for 3 and say 1-1. I foresee kind of another one of those all hands on deck rock fight type of close wins on Wednesday against Maryland. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the high 60s, low 70s. And then Sunday, I'm feeling probably like a 7-8 point loss at Michigan State. I think they'll play well. I think they'll give themselves a chance. They have played well for the most part on the road this year. Again, you hope that water finds its level with the 3-point shooting at some point. And at this point, if the light comes on in any of the games that they play moving forward, it's going to be at a massive and opportune time. So I hope that's there for them. I don't think that they're going to end the year with 3 straight losses. Contrary to what people on social media and the message board say, I still think this is a well-coached team. Given how they are constructed, I think maybe they are, or they have won maybe a little more than their construction would say they should this year. So they will get it figured out. I think there's a lot of good guys and a lot of experienced guys and a lot of players that have won a lot of games on their roster, but 1-1 to end the year, and then we'll go move on to Indy. Before we get into a little bit of football talk, I want to welcome in a new sponsor for us. Something brand new is taking flight at the Big House during the 2025 season, and I have one here with me. The 2025 official Michigan Jordan Fly Elite football just dropped for the first time ever. Jordan Brand's signature innovation, performance, and swagger are hitting the turf in the Big House. This ball, I'm on the screen here. This is the official game ball, and not the official game ball. It's one of them that the Wolverines will use in action this season. It's going to come off the fingertips of Bryce Underwood and whoever else takes a pass for Michigan this fall. It's got the signature maze, Jumpman, and Block M logos, as you can see right here. It's engineered to Michigan quarterback specifications. It was designed with input and guidance from the Wolverine coaches and players. It's got pebbled lace, a visible colored maze lace reinforcement flap, and overlay stripe, handcrafted in the USA by our friends over at Big Game Football Factory. And every ball that you get is going to come with a certificate of authenticity. So it's not just a football. It's a piece of Michigan football history. It's perfect for the true Michigan fans in your life, whether you want to display it, give it as a gift, or just buy it, toss it around the backyard. It's starting to get a little nicer here in the state of Michigan. So we'll see more people outside playing here soon. But you can be among the first to own it. You can snap yours up today over at biggameusa.com/Wolverines. That's biggameusa.com/Wolverines. All right, we move on.
I would never be able to throw that thing, guys. I'd have to leave that on my shelf. Man, it's so sweet.
I
It's
know.
real nice.
Yeah,
Well, I
it
hear
is.
we have a
Well,
couple.
it's
There's a
the
couple
ground.
coming, so you
Can't
guys are
wait.
supposed to get one too. Maybe we keep one to display in that nice little mansion of yours over that fireplace.
Yeah,
a beautiful
that's a great
piano.
place. We'll see what the ladies say. You know, I don't get a say when it comes to decorating around here.
Just between the three of us, maybe we can keep one to throw around and one to display, and we'll
Awesome.
see what happens with the other one. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's the nicest football I've ever held. So it's yeah, check yours out today. Really happy to get that in the mail over the weekend. We're going to talk a little bit of football now. This past weekend at the NFL Combine, Michigan had, I believe, 8 guys there, 9 actually, if you want to count. William Wagner was there, right? Clayton as a long snapper, special teamer. So 9 guys in attendance, and most of them didn't work out. So there's not a lot to pull from it in that regard. Guys like Mason Graham, Will Johnson are sitting out, going to wait for Michigan's Pro Day on March 21st. Colston Loveland, of course, had an off-season shoulder surgery that he'll be ready to go by mini camps. Probably not going to do anything at Michigan's Pro Day. And Kenneth Grant wanted to test. The guy I was looking forward the most to seeing test, given the fact that we know how well he moves at the size he is, and he pushed to perform still, but medical testing showed a hamstring injury. He should be fine to go for Michigan's Pro Day on March 21st as well. But really the biggest storyline coming out of the weekend is that Donovan Edwards tested extremely well. Seems like he interviewed well, ran a 4.45 40-yard dash. I think he had 23 reps on the bench press. Nice little weekend from the Don. Any takeaways from what we saw from players or on-field stuff at the Combine? Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of it, which has become a bit of a trend with Michigan players over the last few years, whether it be due to injury or otherwise. But good weekend for the Don.
I think he slipped a little bit on his 40, if I'm not mistaken, too. Somebody said so, but I couldn't be happier for this guy. Right? He's been maligned, and we've even had some criticisms about him as an every down back. But you don't have to be that guy in the NFL. You can be one of those backs that a Marshall Faulk type, where we saw what he did against Maryland as a freshman, where he was catching passes all over the place. We know he can catch it. His strength, his work ethic was put on display. This guy is going to be a pro for a while, in my opinion. It doesn't mean he's going to be a great running back in the NFL, but he's one of those guys that can do a lot of different things for you, and including catch the ball, as we see on the picture right here in front of me. So I like this kid so much. I just have a good feeling about him, and I'm really, really happy for him. That's what I will say. I was really intrigued to see what Kenneth Grant was going to run. We had some people on the board predicting 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 or something like that. He's not going to run that. He's going to run something like a 4.98 or something like that, which is still ridiculous for a guy his size. But this group of Wolverines is special. These are holdovers from the championship team that are going to have really, really good NFL careers.
Yeah, and actually 4.44 official for Don, 23 bench press
The
reps,
Don.
4 shy of Blake Corum last year with 27, which is still ridiculous. One of the highest or the highest, one of the highest for running backs ever at the Combine. And when Blake Corum was hurt and all he could do was lift up the upper body heading into his final year at Michigan before he was cleared, he hit 30 in front of his teammates. So these dudes are doing it right. Jay Tress and Ben Herbert, the work that they put in with those guys in the state-of-the-art weight room over there at Schembechler Hall has been impressive, and obviously the training they've done since then. But, yeah, Donovan Edwards showing pretty well. I don't think it's super surprising, given we know what kind of speed he has. Ohio State fans know what kind of speed he has. Washington fans know what kind of speed he has. Penn State fans know what kind of speed he has, et cetera. I think it's some of the other things that maybe are making him more of a mid or late round draft pick than an early round pick. But hopefully that boosted his stock. I think he could do some things in the NFL there. But KG, I wanted to see him too. I mean, that was kind of the one everyone was looking for. And only 2 guys. Donovan's the only one that ran a 40, and only 2 guys went through on-field drills. That was Donovan Edwards and Miles Hinton. So, and a lot of the top guys opt out anyway, but it seemed like Mason Graham had a heel bruise, Kenneth Grant, the hamstring thing. It does suck like that this happens and you have some prospects taking spots for other guys, but I get that there's an off-field component. There's the medical component. The teams want to get these guys evaluated. They want to interview them. So, yeah, it's not as eventful as that having 18 guys there last year, but hopefully Donovan Edwards boosted his stock, and Miles Hinton the same thing.
Yeah, and for the record, anyone that thought Kenneth Grant or thinks Kenneth Grant is going to run a 4.6 or whatever, Aiden Hutchinson ran, I think, a 4.75, which was still considered a really good time. Yep. And he had like an all-time great defensive end combine. It would be fun to see. It's unfortunate that we won't get to see it because Michigan's Pro Day is locked down. I think only NFL Network and ESPN people are usually allowed in there for that. We certainly aren't. So I'm a little bummed that we won't get to see any of these guys work out. But you know what is that event, those guys are put through the ringer. I know of at least one Michigan player who went through, like, over the duration of the medical testing days or whatever it was last week, went through like 12 hours of medical testing in addition to interviews and meeting with teams and meeting with agents and things like that. So, yeah, that event, I get why guys hold out for Pro Day because it is friendlier confines. It gives you, for Michigan, those guys get an extra, 3 weeks or so to kind of prepare, get their bodies right and that. But most of these teams, again, I think a lot of this on-field testing, it either confirms or denies what they see when they put on the film. It is still a film-based evaluation process and the meetings you go through. And by all accounts, it sounds like meetings went well for all of these guys. So excited to see NFL draft just a little over a month away now. Excited to see how these guys line up when it is time for that. How about we move into questions now? We might wrap a little early this week.
Also, the Pro Day is, I mean, especially when Ben Herbert was there, you get a friendlier hand time on some of these times. Ben Herbert seemed to be notorious for that, which is fine. So you get it maybe 300-400 better on some of those times, which is nice. But yeah, it would be fun to actually see it in person.
One last thing I want to say about football. I don't know where the spring game being canceled rumors started, but that was never a thing. And Sharon Moore has confirmed that, right? Where did that originate? Was it on social media?
Well, it's been these coaches canceling their spring games, and I think I think that's kind of the genesis of it.
Right, and they had the sponsors lined up, so you chase down these stupid rumors from social media for people on the message boards, but that was never going to be a thing, nor should it be. That's going on as scheduled. There are going to be big time recruits there, so hopefully we get one of those nice April days instead of one of those April days where we get some sleet and 37-degree temperatures. But regardless, there will be a spring game this year.
Yeah, that's shout out to Pete Nakos. He talked to Sharon Moore at the Combine. He's had some stuff over at the site. That's what use that promo code UM1. You'll be able to get yourself behind the paywall and see some of Pete's reporting from on the ground in Indianapolis. Fellas, let's move to our Q&A segment to close out the show. We're going to start with, we'll actually start with the chat today. I'll go to this one from Cole Smith. It's a basketball question. He asks, is Trey McKinney a day one starter? Of course, a top 15, 16 guy coming in next year.
I think part of it depends on what they get in the portal, right? And Trey's got a Big Ten body already. He's built that way. It really kind of depends on, again, the competition around him. We know Trey Donaldson's likely coming back, right? But is Roddy Gale going to be back next year? We don't know, right? And they are definitely going to be looking at the portal again. You get 15 scholarships now, fellas, so there's going to be competition. I think Trey is going to play. I do not expect him to be a day one starter. That's just my opinion. Do I think he has the ability to be? Yes. Yeah, he's a McDonald's All-American. I love his game. But to me, he'll play, but he won't start from day one.
There are no more popular questions than in football. What's the starting offensive line going to be when it's January and the season starts in August? Or what's the starting five going to be when it's March and there's still games to go this season? But that's the way this goes. I would say probably not, but it's moving pieces. I could easily see him being one too. I think Namari Burnett, whether or not he comes back, would be help determine this one way or the other as well. But Trey McKinney's a stud. I saw him last week at his playoff game. 18 points, perfect from the field, perfect from the free throw line, 3-4 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals. and only played 3 quarters in a blowout win. So the competition wasn't great, but helped his team win a state title last year. They look like a contender again this year, and will be interesting to follow how they do. But yeah, you talk about a good athlete, and he's thick, like you said, built for the Big Ten. He'll hold up. He's gonna be good. And then I wonder how he does in the McDonald's All-American game too. First time in a few years that they've had one of those.
Something that's interesting about Trey is, and again, I don't know if he's going to start or not, but it seems like what he does well is something they're kind of missing in terms of being a guy that can score from all 3 levels. And I think he's athletic enough. Like, he's not a guy that, he's not Glenn Robinson the third, right? He's not going to jump out of the gym, but I think he's, functionally athletic on both ends. Pretty good defender too, from what I've seen. Hopefully able to catch a playoff game of his over the next couple of weeks here as they move through and maybe play for a state title. But yeah, I don't know if he's in their starting 5, but could I see him being one of their 5 best players? I could see that right out of the box, because I think he might be up there now if he was on the team. I think that highly of him. Another one from Cole Smith says, why is Roddy Gale still getting so many minutes instead of Justin Pippen?
Well, if you watch Justin's minutes, he's not like he's making shots, right? It's not like he's defending great. Roddy Gale's been a better defender than Justin Pippen when he's been on the floor. So you've got to take everything into consideration here. Justin Pippen you're not playing for next year. You're playing for this year. You're still trying to win a title. And Roddy Gale is still, even shooting 1 for 26 or whatever it is in 2005, is still your better option at this point than Justin Pippen. So as unfortunate as that is right now. So the hope, obviously, is that Roddy Gale will return to form, because we've seen what he can do. I think, as Anthony said, we saw some really good games from him earlier in the year where we know what he can do. Justin, there are times at the moment seems a little bit too big for him. Yeah, he had a nice little run in garbage time yesterday, but you need somebody to step up when the game's on the line. So that's my opinion on it. I think you're going to see more Reuben Jones when he's healthier than Roddy Gale. That's why we saw him move into the starting lineup. And he is more of a key than Justin Pippen will be.
I thought it was interesting today. Dusty May said that we've got to trust our bench more. And then the next sentence was, I liked how those young guys played in the last 5 minutes when they came in. That included Pippen. But I agree with also your assessment on it. Maybe they give him a little bit more run, but it's like his play hasn't demanded that. If he could, one thing you got to be able to do if you're a freshman and you want to be a mainstay in the rotation on a good team that has other options, is you got to be able to hit open shots when they're there. You're probably not going to be creating a ton of them yourself. You're probably not going to be an elite defender right away. I think he has potential. I actually think Kaysen has potential as a defender, and then Fat Brooks seems to already be a good, at least on-ball defender right now. But Kaysen's missed some open threes. Pippen's missed some open threes as well. I mean, you got to be like, I know Zach Irvin's a different example, but his role was perfect. Like, he hardly ever dribbled the basketball as a freshman back in 2014, but he would come in and just pop a couple threes, and you can help change the game that way. So I'm not saying they have to be him, because different position, different role, but that allowed him to have that role, and those were big minutes. But those guys aren't bringing that right now. I wonder if you do give Fat Brooks a little bit more of a look in a game like yesterday when you couldn't defend or stay in front of anybody. That would have been interesting. I loved his energy he brought. So I'm a little biased because we went to the same high school, but also just seeing it through what he's brought. I mean, I think he's a talented player that, who knows? I don't know what Dusty May meant by that. And then he also said, when I asked him about Reuben Jones coming back and he got into, we haven't made decisions on starting lineup or rotation, he said, we're probably going to tweak some things. I wonder what he meant by that too. So I think they're going to look at some options here to kickstart some things.
What about that 3 big lineup when you had Cheddar on the floor at the same time, but defensively?
that's when
tough.
The run happened.
Right, exactly. So, but tweaking some things to me means Jones gets back in the starting lineup when he's healthy, and then maybe Fat gets a look. I liked the energy he brought at the end. He's going to have fresh legs, right? So even if it's 2 minutes before a TV timeout, put him in there for defensive purposes and see what he can do, and maybe provide a spark at times, and let some of these guys rest, because God knows they're going to need it here.
They got to let it loose a little bit more and just play free. Maybe like throwing those guys in there and getting some energy and excitement going will help. It just feels like they're a little tight at times. I feel like those guys maybe can freshen it up a little bit. But then at the same time, you get in a possession and, all right, well, you got to find a guy to score. Got to find the guy to get a stop. So it's a tough balance. They got to
feel so much better if LJ Kaysen would just be much better defensively, a little better defensively. I mean, it's just like, man, what is it? Traffic cone, Anthony? Is that what you're? So he's got to be better on that end of the floor if he wants to play.
Yeah, Kaysen, I think, yeah, and this goes beyond this year. I think probably has the highest upside of any of those freshmen. I think you've gotten some decent minutes out of Pippen at times. I wouldn't mind seeing a little more fat. I remember preseason, Dusty May said he's almost like a defensive back, the way he plays defensively, because he's just able to, get his arm out and tip a pass or affect it that way. But they need guys right now that make shots, and the three freshmen consistently haven't really shown an ability to do that. So I would think that if
go ahead. I thought you were going to move on. I just wanted to say, what's funny is everyone was saying, when are we going to see more LJ Kaysen? And now he's played like 17 minutes the last couple of games, and people are like, when are we going to see more Justin Pippen?
Right.
Who's next? Goes,
We got people asking about Oscar Goodman, for goodness sake. So
put him in.
That was me.
Yeah, why not?
I just asked how good he was, and I'll tell you what, I was encouraged. In fact, I just got a text from Oscar wanting to see this article that we wrote on him today, and asking if I could send it to him. Do I make him sign up with the $1 deal, or do I send it to him?
I almost made Trey McKinney do that the other day when he hit me up.
No, we're gonna send it to him.
We got bills to pay, man. All these guys are making NIL. They can throw us $1.
Every dollar counts, but no, Oscar's going to be good.
Of course, we're sending it to him.
Yeah, and he's got he's physical. He's got a high basketball IQ, and I think there's a little bit of that lacking in spots on this team too. So he's going to be a great addition next year.
We'll just make it 3 for 3 with Cole Smith here real fast. He says, when do you guys think Walters will be back? And essentially, when asked earlier, U of M spokesman said he's injured, so we don't know. Dusty said we're going to leave it in the hands of the trainers. I'm not really expecting him back imminently. I just feel like when you're dealing with a back injury, that's just, you're one weird movement away from retweaking it and being in bed for 4 weeks. So yeah,
we've heard rumblings of maybe before the Big Ten tournament. So hopefully that happens. They could certainly use another guy who can stretch the floor a little bit, because right now nobody's respecting a whole lot of their shooters out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He looks like, even walking around yesterday before the game was a little bit tough for him after getting up off the bench. So yeah, he's going through it. Hopefully he can get back, because he could change a game with a couple threes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Cole. We'll move over to our message board now. We will take this one from, and this is the last one we'll take actually today. 99TT player TT99. That's a mouthful there. Wants to know, how would John Beilein handle a guy that turns the ball over like that so consistently? And I asked him which guy, and I think he just meant the team in general. So, I mean, you guys are both kind of John Beilein historians. Me to a lesser extent. How would John Beilein handle the team as currently constructed and playing the way they have been?
I think he meant Wolf.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
There are two things on this. Number one, there would be much more emphasis on fundamentals in practice, and I'm not saying what Dusty May is doing is wrong, right? But it's just that John Beilein was so unique in the way he had these guys practice. Two-hand chest pass, and that, number one, is going to eliminate a couple turnovers a game, right? But as John told me this summer, he goes, me, he said, you turn the ball over, you don't play. So that right alone, as much as you need some of these guys, you've got to ingrain it in their heads that, man, you are careless with the ball like that, then you aren't going to see the floor. So, and so the big question is, how many of these guys on this roster would he have recruited, and would he have seen it the same way as Dusty did? Dusty's constructing a roster to run and to get up and down the floor, whereas John Beilein's looking at turnovers and everything else and fundamentals. So it's not really an apples to apples question. It's more apples to oranges, but there's no question in my mind that they would have less turnovers. But again, you're not talking about similar playing styles here.
Yeah, what John Beilein would do is he'd have a point guard bring it up every time, walk the ball up the floor, call a set for them. And like you said, it starts in the summer. Every time we get this question, it starts in the summer when they're using their 8 hours that they have or whatever it is during the different segments of the calendar to pivot and pass to the outside hand, catch on 2 feet so you can use either pivot foot depending on where the defender is. All these little things that add up that seem like the minutia or the little things that then in the tournament, they're playing crisp and they got the best habits, and those little one good pass leads to another good pass, leads to a good shot, things that add up that you don't even notice. So, I mean, he was just a master at it. So it is apples to oranges. It's completely right. Different play style. Michigan gets more offensive rebounds. They never crashed under John Beilein. That's how they make up for some of those possessions. They're not defensive rebounding enough or forcing enough turnovers, but to win the shot battle. But there's just different ways of going about it and piecing together how you're going to play and try to be as efficient as possible.
And it's hard not to compare, right? When you see a pass at a kid's ankles and you're like, that never would have happened under Beeline. That would have been right in the chest and he'd been ready to shoot.
I don't, yeah.
100%. Or the one-handed passes, and as Beeline used to say again, it told me this summer when we were talking, he said, those are fine, as long as, you're not just being lazy with it, but they got to be where they're supposed to be. So that's how I'd answer that question.
I do wonder, and this might be something that gets asked after the season is ultimately done. Anytime you talk roster construction or things that they maybe should have done with Dusty in season, it seems like he's just like, hey, man, I'm just trying to win a basketball game like 2 days from now. I do wonder if the lead up to this season, a lot of it was getting these guys in the system, used to playing fast at the expense of maybe some fundamental things that they've done wrong all year that, you get to this point in the season when you just haven't repped as much in some of the fundamentals. It's hard to just say, oh, well, yeah, the rebound better. Just snap your fingers and you'll rebound better. I wonder if that's, if we talk to him after the year, if that might be something, not even as a regret, just maybe something he takes as maybe next year they applied a little bit differently. But, it does seem like in a lot of key areas, when games kind of do go south for them or things aren't going their way, it's just basic fundamental stuff. It's not roster construction. It's nothing more than, hey, you just weren't where you were supposed to be or didn't execute the way you were supposed to. So
So I want to make it clear, I have no complaints about the way this season has gone in year one. After winning 8 games, I see all these people jumping off ledges, oh, this team's poorly coached. Get your head out of your ass. Poorly coached. They went from 8-24 to a chance potentially to compete for a Big Ten championship here in the last game of the year. It's unbelievable what he has accomplished here, especially with the flawed roster that they have. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying there are pieces that he doesn't have the team on the floor that he really wants, right? And he'll get that. I don't mean that. I mean, his ideal team, right, is not going to have these scoring droughts at 3 different positions at one time. So it's going to get better. So that's where I am with this team and what Dusty May has accomplished this year.
Yeah, a couple of things too, like, those weaknesses like rebounding or whatever, they've popped up against teams that are good offensive rebounding teams that commit a lot of resources to it, bring in a bunch of bodies to the glass. Like, it's not like it's just they're being out efforted by like every team on the schedule. And really, for the most part, when games have gotten tight, especially in the last 2 months, they've executed well down the stretch, better than the opponent, and won a lot of these close games. So it's not like that they're like, just letting things snowball. Like, it's happened a couple times. The Michigan State ending was bad, but that was a close game going down the stretch before the last 5 minutes. And then the Illinois game got away from you, and a bunch of reasons we listed earlier. So they've still done a good job, and it's been an incredible season relative to expectations, even if a lot of the wins were close, and still basketball to be played. I mean, people can throw in the towel if they want because you lost one game here yesterday, but there's still basketball to be played, and the most meaningful games are ahead of them.
Something I still struggle to, and maybe I don't even know where I stand on this yet, but I feel like people always say that X guy is unplayable or these guys are unplayable, but also that they're poorly coached. So it's like, are they poorly coached or are guys not playing well? Is it this? Is it that? Guys, this team won 8 games last year. And I know that when you get into a season and you play as well as they did and show what they did, the goalposts do move. Like, it's not, for weeks, it hasn't been about just getting, you could argue months. It hasn't been about just getting in the NCAA tournament. You're in the fight. You have been in the fight, and at one point considered the favorite, to win the Big Ten. If things break the right way the next week or so, you could win this thing outright. You could win a share of it, whatever it is. And despite all of that, they're still there. So I don't want to hear the poorly coached. I don't want to hear that, it's a roster full of misfits. It's a good basketball team that has been well coached, that hasn't played its best basketball down the stretch. And over the last month or so, you've kind of seen their KenPom profile flip from, you're losing a few coin flip games early in the year. You think the Arkansas game, the Oklahoma game, and now you've been winning games that maybe analytically speaking or win probability speaking, you shouldn't have won. The fact of the matter is you're 22-7. Your destiny still not entirely in your own hands, but you go 2-0 this week. Hey, you're gonna have put your name on something special and something that you can kind of sink your teeth into. So we'll see what happens from there. Excited to see this game Wednesday, obviously Sunday's game as well. But when Thursday rolls around, we will have Wednesday's game to talk about. So excited about that. We'll get a better idea of what this team's response to what feels like its worst effort of the season right now, Purdue aside. I'm excited to see what the response is, because once something like that happens, you flush it, you move on, and you go from there. So any other final thoughts, fellas, before we close it out?
Nope, let's do this.
All right. Again, thank you guys for watching. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our website for a single $1. It's the best deal in America. We love when people take advantage of that. So that code is on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you to our producer, Megan, behind the scenes. For Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will talk to you again next time.